we're not really making money with this, man. Like, honestly, this is not a lucrative thing whatsoever. The interesting thing about this is, like, first of all, we made so few of those. Like, we're talking like, what was it, like 80 pairs or something? And the people were like killing us to get those, especially in some sizes. Like 38 was gone in, I'm not lying, 2 hours.
$700. I mean, it's $660, but I'm rounding up because 700 sounds better. But $660 for a pair of jeans. If you're even like just peripherally aware of the hobby slash cult that is salvage denim, you know that $300 jeans are not out of the ordinary. Like, just about all the big Japanese brands are between $200 and $300 for like a standard pair of jeans from them. And I've actually already done a video as to why Japanese salvage jeans are so expensive here. I encourage you to check that out if you're new to this scene. As a very quick summary though, before we get into this video, relative to your regular jeans from like Gap or most Levi's, salvage denim, which usually comes from Japan, as a rule, salvage denim is thicker, it takes more skill and labor and cotton to produce, has a wider variety of textures available. They produce unique fades than most cheaper brands. Like the ones that cheap brands, like they just try to fake their fades. These things will actually give you the fades. They have very low production numbers, so almost everything is limited edition, which people like. And every pair of jeans is unique because it's made on old-fashioned looms that are very hard to maintain, require a ton of skill to operate, and typically produce fabric that is irregular. So no other pair of jeans has the exact same weave pattern than the pair that you get. Like, it's a very old-fashioned and very long-lasting way of making denim. Every pair of jeans is unique, and it becomes more you as it ages and conforms to your body and fades around your phone and wallet and thighs and so on. That was a very truncated version of why people like Japanese jeans, but it's that's why people will pay $300 for them. But $700, $700 jeans. I did a video a few months ago about a pair of jeans from Tanuki. And as is always the case, I didn't talk to the brand beforehand. I didn't get the jeans for free. I never do, because Japanese denim companies typically never have English-speaking PR people, or if they do, they're not very good at doing marketing. But Tanuki is different. They actually are good at marketing and talking to their customers. And after I made the video, an Irishman named Marcus Schleich, who works at Tanuki, reached out to me.
Hey there, how are you doing?
And asked if I wanted a pair of jeans as like, I don't know, like a thanks for making the video. So I went to the website and I said, well, if I'm getting a free pair of jeans, I'll take your most expensive pair, please, and thank you. I'll get these $700 jeans because I want to know what makes a pair of jeans $700. So they agreed to do it. As much as this video might look like an ad, I'm not being paid or anything. I was just really curious about a $700 pair of jeans, and they were nice enough to talk to me about it. So why are these jeans so expensive? I'm gonna try and break this down into multiple sections. There's the fabric itself, there's the dye used, and the dyeing technique, which is like kind of the meat of the whole thing. I made this so you could see how this company explains their most prestigious pair of jeans, because actually on their website, their product page isn't very descriptive. So it was very mysterious, I had to know. So let's start off talking about the fabric. So for starters, the cotton is all hand-picked. It comes from Texas, and then it's all hand-sorted and woven into yarn in Japan.
And the first thing is that every piece that goes into the yarn is actually hand-picked, right? Like, that is something, like, you probably want to know why these jeans are so expensive. So I'm gonna start this off by saying, like, actually, there's so much manual labor involved in making these, it's insane. So basically, these people split the yarns, right? Like, they actually look for the things that go into the yarn. If you look this, like when it's spun. So all of this is done by hand. This is just a piece of yarn. It's just to illustrate this. Unfortunately, I don't have any proper denim yarn here. So the idea is that these guys that's been around doing this for hundreds of years actually, and it's still done in one of these like really tiny dyeing factories. They pick everything by hand. They split everything by hand. So just sorting the threads that go into the yarn before it's spun takes ages. Right? That's basically one of the first steps. This is exactly what I mean by giving these guys the full control about the fibers that they combine and the different thicknesses of the fibers too. By the way, if you can see this, like there's so many different like thread thicknesses involved in this, and combining these together gives you exactly this. Like, at no point do you have this feeling like it's like pilling or something. You know what I mean? If you look closely, yes, it's incredibly textured, but at the same time, and I think this is the beauty of it, it doesn't look like on steroids, if you know what I mean. Like, there are simply fabrics out there where you think like, nah, this looks a bit over the top, if you know what I mean, because it looks like overly engineered to just look textured. What I really like about this is that it has a very organic feel to it, which is because it is an organic process in this. I think this is something that one of the guys once told me, actually one of the guys who works in a mill, and he said, look, what you're doing is you look for the evenness in unevenness, which is a very Japanese way of thinking. But basically, it's exactly what you say. It's yes, you want these extremely textural elements, you want the slobbiness and all of this, but at the same time, I actually think we do this quite well. We like really textured fabrics, but we want to keep them constrained to a certain amount. You know, we don't want fabrics that look like some of the stuff that Naked and Famous does, for instance. That's crazy. It's great, and I'm happy that they do it, but that's not us. I think we want texture, but at the same time, we wanted to have this like refined Japanese feel to it, like real artisans making this and thinking a lot about the end result. And this is something that we are really proud of. And I think this is honestly, I mean, this is incredibly expensive. I know this, but this is what you pay for. This literally is what you pay for, something that is unrivaled and no one else can do it.
Another reason why the fabric itself, and we're still just talking about the fabric, is expensive is because for every 100 meters of fabric, roughly 70 meters are not usable because some of the yarns are so brittle, they'll fall apart in the almost 100-year-old looms that Tanuki uses to create the jeans. They can recycle those, but still a very small amount of the fabric winds up usable in these jeans. The last thing to mention about the fabric is the tension. There's absolutely no tension in the yarn whatsoever. If you know a thing or two about Japanese denim, you've probably heard the term low tension weaves a lot. That's produced by rope dyeing, but this is hang dyeing, which produces zero tension. So that means that they stretch a considerable amount, which makes them a real pain to order because like they stretch more than the average pair of jeans. But also it makes them a little bit more expensive because the company uses more total cotton than they would if it was like a low tension or a high tension weave. You know, like at the end of the day, ultimately, like they are using more cotton to each pair of jeans because it hasn't been stretched out in the production process as it would have for another denim company that charges less. So that's the fabric. Let's talk about the dye. So with the dye, a lot of guys think Japanese denim is expensive because it's dyed with real indigo, like dye made from the indigo plant. But that's actually rarely the case. If you're getting $300 jeans, you're getting synthetic indigo, even if it's called pure indigo.
Pure indigo is basically a fancy word for synthetic indigo. That's all you need to know. Like pure indigo just sounds a lot better than its chemical.
Now, synthetic indigo is chemically the same as natural indigo, so it's not a big deal that you get synthetic, right? But natural indigo has more impurities, like indirubins, which gives beautiful color variations. Synthetic indigo makes a blue that doesn't vary, and again, in Japanese jeans, it's actually the impurities and irregularities that people covet. So that's the big reason why people like the natural real indigo. These jeans are dyed with actual indigo fera, and not only that, but it's grown in Japan. If you do get jeans with natural indigo, it's usually from India, but these plants are grown right in Japan for a hyper-Japanese bent to the product, and because it's locally sourced in such a developed country, that also adds to the cost. But where the price tag really comes from is the way the fabric is dyed. If you look on their very underwritten product page for these jeans, Tanuki just says, quote, "It is a traditional Japanese dyeing method that is unrivaled," and quote, "It is our most limited fabric as the production is slow and there are only a handful of Japanese craftsmen able to dye the fabric. No other denim requires this much manual labor," end quote. So what's the big deal with this fancy dyeing process known as Aizome? Because that's not as much detail as I would like.
What they usually do, this is basically a dyeing container, and they put the yarn into this by hand. They wrap it around a stick and then they dunk it in here for about 24 to 48 hours, and then they take it out again, right? So there's a couple of things that are interesting about this. First of all, by just hanging the thread, the yarn loose over a stick like this, basically looping it, right? There's no tension on the yarn whatsoever, which is something like you probably know that most jeans these days are rope dyed in Japan, which means you have these massive machines where the yarn is like this, which puts tension on the yarn. And as you can see, basically a lot of the natural like texture of the yarn actually gets stretched out because there's so much tension. Basically, within this process, there's never any tension on the yarn whatsoever. So all the sloppiness that the guys have deliberately created by picking up the different fibers that go into the yarn is preserved. And at no point do we stretch this out. But keep in mind that all of this is done by hand. Even the dunking in the dyeing container is done by hand. There's basically guys who dunk this in there by hand, take it out, let it oxidize for a couple of days, put it back in, right? until they get just the right shape. Yes. Okay. The reason why you need to put it out is because of the oxidation. Like basically the indigo reacts to the air, and that leads to the certain shade. If you just put something in there and take it out, you really need to be careful. Keep in mind that the yarns are dangling, right? So what you actually need to do, you need to take them out so slowly that all the cotton doesn't stick together, because you want all the parts to get the equal amount of air. You know, the cotton, the yarn needs to breathe. So you need someone who has very steady hands and experience taking it out, putting it somewhere, then putting it back in. Like these guys have experience. Like you probably know this, like every Japanese person who takes on a trade, they have this idea that they need to master this. It's the one thing they devote their lives to. And these guys who basically do nothing but dye things by hand dye shit, like that's their life. So if you said something like this to a Japanese guy, probably they would let you do it, and you'd see that it's actually a lot harder than you think. So just as a comparison, like if you get like one of the normal jeans, they're super dark blue in the beginning, and eventually, you know, they fade. Like that's the idea, right? Like they basically fade, and that is because with the rope dyeing process, the core of the yarn is still white. So the more you wear them, the more of the indigo gets chipped off, and you get to see the white core of the yarn, and then you get like all these lovely fades that we want. So this is a bit different when it comes to Aizome fabrics, because in this case, the yarn is actually dyed to the very core. So they dip it into this container multiple times until it's actually 100% penetrated. So you'll get fades over time that they will be a lot less pronounced than when you do something that is rope dyed, for instance. Right? All of these processes are done by hand, and like I have to be very honest, like this is what you mainly pay for. You pay for people doing all these processes by hands. No other fabric that I'm aware of can rival the texture and the uniqueness of the texture of these. Like Aizome fabrics have this massive advantage that if you look at like a lot of the fabrics we do, they're like, we're no strangers to slubby and like very textured fabrics. Like this is something that we do. But the problem is that with no other technique can you achieve something that is so irregular. Like it's simply not possible to get something so slubby with rope dyeing processes. So this is something that is really unique about this. Next step, after we have done this for actually sometimes weeks, right? Because it has to go out, dry, go back in. If you ever get your hands on these, the color of these is so vibrant and so satisfying to look at. Like, I know I sound like a marketer right now, but it is true. Like I just enjoy looking at these. And as you can see, I haven't even worn these yet. These are basically, you know, something I admire every day and stroke, and then put them back into the wardrobe to preserve the texture from the inception of the yarn until you get the final product that you pay quite a hefty price for, because this is a unique technique that simply cannot be done with machines. It has all be done by hands. And since all of our garments are 100% made in Japan, you pay for experienced Japanese artisans. You know, there's no cost cutting involved in this. Everything is made in Japan, which is something that we're very committed to. Like a lot of people just want these in their collection. They're not wearing them, you know, because they know what Aizome fabrics are. They just have them, put them in the wardrobe, potentially open a museum up one day, I don't know. But there is a massive market out there of people who basically just wait for a new release in Aizome and they're going to snatch it up. That's what's going to happen. It's insane. It's intense.
Tanuki jeans, man. That's it. That's my interview. That's the whole thing. I'm really, really grateful that Marcus gave me his time. There are more expensive jeans out there, by the way. Like I know that Samurai once grew their own cotton, so they could have Japanese cotton and Japanese indigo, used to make Japanese jeans, like the most Japanese pair of jeans imaginable, and it was like thousands and thousands of dollars, partly because it's so hard to grow cotton in Japan, but that's a story for another time. Except it probably isn't a story for another time, because Japanese companies never talk to guys like me, and I will probably never again be able to interview a representative from a Japanese denim company. So I'm very, very grateful that Marcus gave me his time and Tanuki gave me these jeans. Part of me thinks I should have gotten a size up, but they stretched out and I think they worked out like a decent size. Tanuki, check out the website below as well, and my original Tanuki review that led to this video is also below in the description. That's it. Make sure you subscribe and like and all that kind of stuff. I've got more Japanese denim video stuff coming up, and also boots and bags and heritage apparel, so stick around.